Good morning, y'all. It's Cathy. How you doing this morning? I hope everyone's doing good. I know that it's going to take a few minutes for everyone to get on here. I hope that I don't stutter and say "and" a lot today. I aggravate myself watching my videos, but I don't care. I'm not going to edit everything. Anyway, I hope y'all are having a good day. Today, I'm going to start the story of the book that I wrote called Surrounded by Spirits. That's when I was, I used my maiden name, Cathy with a C, Cathy, Graves, Graves, and the name of the book is Surrounded by Spirits, and it can be purchased at barnesandnoble.com on their online store. Anyway, I'm going to start telling that story by memory because I looked for my manuscript and I thought I found it, but it was a different book that I wrote. So I can't find my manuscript, and I always give the books away when I get one, so I don't have a book. I'm just going to have to go by memory. Apparently, I'm supposed to go by memory with these things. And y'all know how much I hate my glasses, these ones. I'm just messing around until everybody gets on here, y'all. I hate them, but I paint with them. So I'm going to wear these really ugly ones today because they're bigger. I do like those. Aren't they sparkly? Anyway, I know hardly anybody's on here yet, but I just want to go ahead and show the jewelry I got from Sharon this week. And this is not a jewelry show. I've just showed this for my friend Sharon, and it's called Paparazzi Jewelry. And I'm going to show you. I was into bracelets this week, and I bought these glasses at Temu, y'all. And I mean, they're cute, but they just don't look right on me. Anyway, that's okay. I'm not here for vanity. I'm here to tell y'all stories. And if you're catching this on replay, y'all, I usually share my friend's jewelry at the beginning of the show, at least for now. Look at that. Isn't that cute? That was $8. You get the necklace and the earrings. Sorry, my fingernails are awful. I don't know if I'm going to take the time to put these back in the bag because it's only a couple minutes before 10, and I'm going to go ahead and start my story at 10 so that we can have plenty of time. It's a long story. I wrote a book on it, and it's a true story. So I'll start that at 10. Here is the next little bracelet. I got this to go with a necklace that I had bought from her. So darn cute, y'all. $8. And let's see. No, I don't sell them. You can't get them from me. Sharon, when you watch my video, put your link on here, or I'll go back in a little while and do it, y'all, if you want to rewatch it. I just didn't have time this morning to put it on. Isn't this cute? I really like this. I like all of it. I like sparkle, as you can tell. I hope I didn't run everybody off last week. Y'all, I was sick all night long. I haven't been anywhere really except the grocery store, and where did I go yesterday? I went somewhere yesterday. Oh, look at that. Isn't that the cutest thing? $8. Paparazzi jewelry. My friend Sharon Trickett Kennedy sells it, and she has a website. If you don't like to watch lives, she has a website you can go to that she'll put on here, I'm sure, after a while when she starts watching my video. And I bought a couple of rings, I think, or something. Here you go. Yeah, I bought a ring. These rings, I've never bought one of her rings, but I even have another order coming in. But anyway, the rings are like this. They have that little stretchy band. They're super cute. My hands are awful, y'all, because I've been painting and doing all kinds of things. But isn't that cute? I love that. It's so cute. Be great for the holidays, you know, Christmas. Look, I look sparkly with my glasses. I like to have fun, y'all. Sorry, I'm a sparkle chick. Anyway, is it 10? It's just now 10 o'clock. I think I have 2 more. I'm gonna start doing. I do art already. I'm working on a painting right now. It's in the beginning stages. It's a cow. And it's on it for a class I'm doing this week. Oh, let me see if I have a little picture of, this is more what the cow's gonna look like when it gets finished. Isn't that cute? And we're doing that Thursday night, and I'm doing it also. I started a what is that called? On school, that website school. I'm going to start doing art classes. I think might be better at art than telling stories. I don't know. And you know, I'd like to know what y'all are thinking about these stories. If you believe them, if what you think about them, if you'd like to tell me. And I need some new followers. So if you would follow me, I would appreciate it so much. Uh-oh, I dropped one. So I'm going to show another couple of, it's not a jewelry show, it's a story show. I'm just showing Sharon's jewelry this morning. Looky there. I might be doing her a disservice, I don't know, but I love her jewelry. Look at that. Anyway, what I was going to say is I'm going to start doing those burned hats, and on my, not this month, on my school, I need to get this jewelry just a minute. On my school, I don't know, I just started it like yesterday or day before. I don't remember what it's called. It's just a website where you can do jewelry, where you can do art and everything. Anyway, aren't those cute? Those will be cute with one of those burned hats. So I'm going to use this to wear with my burned hats. I can't wait to start that craft. It's 10:01, so we're doing really good. Got all the jewelry showed this morning. Isn't that the cutest jewelry? Anyway, I think I told y'all about where to get my one book, and now I'm going to tell y'all about my other books real quick, and then that's all I'm going to talk about, my books, okay? And I'm only doing this because people have asked me. So where this story can be found, and the one book is called Surrounded by Spirits by Cathy with the Seagraves, and then my grandson and I wrote this book. It's called The Monster Bash. It's really great for Halloween. For kids, maybe older kids, like 8, 9 and older. And then I have another book. This isn't the correct cover. It's called Entangled in Desire. This is the old cover, and that's an old picture of me. And then I wrote another book called Camouflage Angel. Now, my books are a little bit violent because it has warfare in it, like men fighting men, not in the military or anything, but one-on-one in these spiritual warfare. You know what? Let me read the back of this book and it'll give you an idea. Entangled in Desire is a heart-wrenching tale of forbidden love. In it, the main characters, Dawn, Michael, and John, find themselves in a love triangle. The lovers wrestle with questions concerning their morality. As the struggle between right and wrong comes to the forefront, spiritual beings manifest to wage war. Battling sin, Dawn fights to hold the ground that she has established in her faith. Sin beckons her. She realizes that her turmoil is about more than her lust and desire. As Dawn prays, she is led by her spirit into a revelation of occult practices in the area in which her business is located. Satan and his minions have entangled Dawn in desire in order to keep her preoccupied in herself. Otherwise, she may reveal to the community what is really taking place at a medieval festival just outside of the town. So that is what Entangled in Desire is about. It has a much better cover now. This is when I first wrote it, so this is one of the originals. And it's also, if you just look up my name, it'll show all of my books. And the other one is Camouflage Angel, and I wrote it. It's about, all of these stories are based around an occult that was out in a particular area and how everybody was battling against them because of the people who had gone missing and things like that. Anyway, that's what this story is going to be about today. I had owned a beauty shop. It looks like we're 4 minutes after 10, so I'm going to go ahead and start. And I appreciate y'all following me because I'm trying to build up my following. And like I said, I'm going to be on the website School, SKOOL, and it's called Art and Crafts Tutorials is the name of the little site that I'm going to be on, and I'm going to be doing my paintings and teaching how to do them. Anyway, I would like to know what y'all are thinking about the stories. sat down, and I have several other stories that I can tell y'all. And again, if someone wants to tell their story, I'll be happy to look at it and talk to you about it. I've only had one person come forward so far. Maybe it's just because y'all aren't ready to tell your stories yet, but I guess I'm gonna have to get a microphone and go out into the neighborhood and start asking people to tell me their story. Anyway, I'm not really going to be looking at comments right now. I don't know if they just don't come up for a while or what happens, because I see a whole lot of them later. I'm going to take my glasses off because they bother me. Anyway, we're going to start at the beginning. I had left the salon that I had been working in for about quite a few years and decided to open my own salon. Well, I wound up opening a small salon in a town nearby where I had worked, about 10 miles from it. And a lot of things happened at that salon that I wrote about in Entangled in Desire. And the reason I wrote Entangled in Desire is because all of the ladies in the shop wanted me to write a love story. So it is a made-up story, but it is based around different activities that had happened there. And then I left that salon and opened another salon a little further out in the country. Actually, in the beginning, I didn't want to open the salon. I just wanted to go work there. So it was located in a convenience store parking lot. And again, I don't use names or anything on my stories. I make up names, and there's made up names in the book, you know, all the books. But basically, I had gone into this hair salon that was located in this strip shopping center, and it was next to a gas station and a daycare and all of that stuff. And I was just gonna hope to have a few clients to keep me busy, but not so many that I would be overwhelmed, because at the old salon I was booked for several weeks in advance, and I just didn't want that kind of pace anymore. I was trying to slack off a little bit. But the first day that I got into that salon, the lady that was there asked me if I wanted to buy it, and I said no. I have already had all the responsibility that I want. You know, I'm trying to get more into the retirement years. I don't want to work as hard as I have been. And so I stayed a few days, and even from the first day I could see that there was a lot of tension, because the lady was very nice most of the time. She did have a lot of stress going on, and so there was some tiffs between her and her mother, because her mother was a receptionist, and you know, there just wasn't enough business to support the salon, and she had put a lot of money into it. And so she was frustrated, and she had another job that she was working, so there was kind of a conflict there. Anyway, I could see that this was not a good situation, and I didn't want to bring my clients, the ones that I did have, that I kept. I tried to give everybody to somebody else when I left the other salon, but I had a few that I was still doing, and actually only like 2, because I didn't tell anybody where I was going except for my very close 2 friends. I was planning to just pick up a few clients at this new place and only have, you know, a few every day. I didn't want to be booked all day long. Anyway, so I finally told her, okay, I'll buy the salon, and I wound up buying the salon. And I didn't have anybody to do during the day, so I brought my Bible in there. And I want to say that if you don't believe in God or any of the things, you know, I always say that I would rather just tell you the stories and let you see if you believe them or not. And I do believe in God, and so if that offends you, I apologize, but I'm not really apologizing for believing in God. I'm just apologizing for offending you if you don't believe. But the stories that I tell, I hope that they will cause you to believe that there's something more than just humans. Anyway, in the spirit world. Anyway, let's see, I was alone in the salon most of the time, and so I sat there and read my Bible, and that would be for sometimes 2 or 3 hours a day. And as long as I was doing that for like 6 months, you know, I didn't really have anything happening, but slowly the business grew, and I had more and more people just stopping in and I wound up getting busy, and all my old customers found me, even though I was trying to hide. And so I wound up getting busy, and then I hired other people to work with me, and I wound up having 4 hairdressers and 2 nail technicians, and we were all busy all the time. You know, we would have our slow times, but most of the time we were very busy, and it was strange because we were out in the middle of a very rural area. But as it turns out that there was all of these subdivisions hidden in the woods that were really elite and very nice subdivisions. It was north of Houston, and so people would live out there in those subdivisions and drive into work. So anyway, as we were there, all of a sudden weird things started happening in the salon, and that would be the lights would flicker, and I had bought 4 small TVs and put them on dressers around the salon so that I could watch American Idol. That tells you how long ago that was. It's when American Idol first came out, and I loved it. And so I'm a music person, and I love to listen to music, and I love talent shows. So I always wanted to watch American Idol. So I had all the TVs sitting around where people could watch whatever they wanted unless American Idol was on, and then we changed it to American Idol. Anyway, the lights would flicker, the TVs would turn on and off, change channels, and I started praying against it because, you know, to me as a Christian, I thought, well, there's something evil going on here, and I'm gonna have to pray against it. So I prayed against it, and I had this strange feeling. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like, yes, there's something evil, but there's something good as well. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. But anyway, as time went along, we were standing there in the beauty shop one day, and you know, we had gotten kind of used to the lights flickering and the TVs turning on and off. I mean, you could stand across the room and see the numbers come up on the TV, like somebody was pushing the buttons to turn the channel, and the remote would be on top of the TV. Nobody had the remote. So it was really strange, and we couldn't quite figure it out, and we started talking about it to everybody, or people would be in there and see these things happening. And one day we were in there, and the trash can lid rose up off the trash can about, you know, I don't know, 5 to 8 inches, something like that. And there was just space between the trash can lid and the trash can, and then the trash can lid just went flying across the room like someone had thrown it like a frisbee. And it shocked me, but I wasn't scared. And some of the other hairdressers were like, oh my gosh, we have a ghost, you know? And I said, and I said, there must be something wrong with the trash can. I knew there wasn't. I was just trying to make logic out of this stuff. So I went over and I put the trash can lid back on the trash can and walked away from it and sat, you know, just stood there for a minute and watched it, and it did it again. The lid rose up off of the trash can and just went flying across the room like somebody was throwing it like a frisbee. And everybody's like, we have a ghost, you know, you're freaking out now. They're kind of scared. And I was like, well, we have something. I'm thinking a demon, you know. I truly was praying against it and everything else. I started calling the preachers and having several different kinds of preachers, the Methodist preacher, the Baptist preacher, the Catholic pastor. He sent holy water by way of one of his parishioners, I guess is what you call it. And I mean, we prayed over the shop. I hung scriptures on the doors. You know, we did all the things, and this activity continued to go on. Well, as time went along, a lady came into my shop, and she said, I bet I know who your ghost is. And I didn't even like calling it a ghost. I just didn't feel it was an evil presence, even though we prayed over it and everything. When it didn't leave, you know, because I believe the scripture about if, you know, if you resist the devil, he'll flee from you. And, you know, you're supposed to, if you tell something to leave in Jesus' name, it has to go, and all the things. I believed all that with my whole heart, and so did everybody that was praying with me. And it just wouldn't leave. So I kept thinking, there's something going on here, and I just don't feel like this presence is evil, but I don't understand. And this was before I had always, I think I've told y'all before, I have always sensed spirits since I was little. Like I said, when I was 5 years old, I went in my grandmother's, one of the rooms in her house, and I told this spirit to leave her house, and it left. And since that time, I've known that I had a ability, but it intensified after I drowned when I was 12 years old. And the officials, I've been involved in some missing person cases, and I was tested by, you know, a forensic psychiatrist, not psychologist. I said psychologist the other day, but it was a forensic psychiatrist who you know, interviewed me and made sure that I didn't have schizophrenia or something. They just believe that some people, when they've had a death or near-death experience, that a part of their brain opens up where they have a hypersensitivity with hearing and seeing and stuff. Sort of like dogs can hear what we can't hear, that type of thing. But anyway, I know I'd had it all my life, but it intensified after my drowning, I suppose. But I was so afraid of it because in my religion I was taught that everything that moves in the spirit world is evil and you have to pray against it, which I did, that I didn't understand it. But anyway, so this is what happened that changed the way that I am about those beliefs, and that is, as we continued just doing our clients, like I said, I had 4 other hairstylists and 2 nail technicians. We would have a room full of people, and weird stuff would happen. One day, I was at the desk taking an appointment. I had this old, all of my shop was decorated in antiques, antique dressers and armoires, and the front desk was a glass case that I kept all of the hair products in, you know, just hairspray, shampoo, and all the things, and maybe some purses and jewelry. And then I had built a half wall between the when you're behind the antique display case, and you're facing out. Well, I had built, that's the reception area. People would sit there and wait for their haircut, and there was a half wall built that had pane glass windows. I put plain glass windows in them to make it look old-fashioned, and I set teapots. I'm so old-fashioned, y'all. I set teapots up on top of that on a little shelf, and then on the other side of that was my daughter's area where she did nails. She was a nail technician, and she had a big, beautiful armoire to keep her supplies in, a really cute little nail table. Anyway, everybody always said it looked like steel magnolias. We had a lot of fun in there, and everybody loved each other a lot, clients and staff. We all worked together very well. Anyway, when I was behind that display case one day, I had this little teapot that was sitting up on the shelf in front of me, but behind the chairs in the reception area. You know, that wall was where the back of the chairs went on. And this was sitting up there on that shelf, and it had this little tiny, about, I don't know, 3-inch round clock in it. This teapot had an indentation where you stick this 3-inch little clock in there. It has a little rubber, you know, thing to hold it in the teapot, which I didn't even realize it came out. I thought it was, you know, permanently adhered in there. Well, all of a sudden, that clock came out of the teapot and flew across the room and hit the display case in the front so hard that the glass rattled. And the glass was thick, antique glass. And I was in the shop by myself that day. Was I by myself? Let me think just a minute, because sometimes I remember being by myself and there was somebody else there. No, I wasn't by myself, because I remember, actually, no, I know my daughter was there, and there may have been another hairdresser there. But anyway, it rattled the front of the glass, and I ducked down because I saw it flying at me. So I ducked down behind the display case, and it hit that glass and just rattled it. And it scared me half to death. And I said, why are you throwing things at me? And then I went and I was like, what is that? I went around there and I picked it up, and I couldn't believe it was that little clock, because that thing did not weigh a half an ounce maybe. And it hit that case like somebody had thrown a baseball at it. So I stuck it back in that teapot, and I walked away, but I kept watching to see if anything else was going to happen. And that little clock came flying out of that teapot again, and went sideways from the shelf, went sideways over towards the front door and hit the light and turned the lights out. And we were just like, what is going on? So anyway, we just had a lot of very forceful activity in the salon. And anyway, we kept talking about it. One day this lady came in and she said, I think I know who your ghost is. And I said, really? Who do you think it is? And again, I decided that this was a presence. I decided it was a spirit, but I didn't feel it was an evil spirit. And that's going to upset some people, but I didn't, because we had prayed over it. We had done everything. It was trying to get our attention, but it wasn't trying to hurt us. And I have learned in my experience now that if a spirit wants to hurt you, they will. And I don't care if you're a Christian, they can hurt you. And don't tell me it's because you're not filled with the Holy Ghost and you're not saved. I'm saved. I'm filled with the Holy Ghost, and I have been hurt by spirits. It's called a spiritual warfare, and there are both good and evil forces, and those evil forces can physically attack you. You can check into it with different people, different churches. But anyway, I'm just telling my true story. So anyway, so I could tell that this spirit wasn't trying to hurt us. They were trying to tell us, get our attention for some reason, and I didn't know why. So this was after months of not being able to get it to leave, with preachers coming in and everything. Anyway, and all of the people that came into my shop, most of them were Christians, so none of us could make it go anywhere. Anyway, and let's see what happened after that. Oh, she told me she thought that she knew who my spirit was. And I said, well, who do you think it is? And she said, well, a long time ago, there was this lady that lived out here, and she went missing. I said, really? And she said, yeah. I said, where? And she goes, just right over there. The strip center was located, there was like a bridge from town. There was the town, then you come down this long road, and there's this bridge, and then there's this strip center. And then just past the strip center, like there's a little street, and then on the corner of the main highway there, which isn't a big highway, it's just a country road with 2 lanes. Anyway, but you call it the highway. Anyway, on the corner of that highway and that little side street, there was her house, which was a 2-story, very nice home, country home. And then she said right next to her, there was this property that's vacant now, but all of the stuff that the people had before then was still there. And a lady and her husband had lived there, and the lady went missing, and they believed that the husband had murdered her and disposed of her body somehow. And I was like, oh my gosh, and then I was like, I didn't even believe in that, that any of that kind of stuff could be true, that a spirit was around because of, being killed somewhere or whatever. I have so much junk here. I didn't believe any of that stuff at that time. So I was thinking it was demonic or something, trying to fool us and all this stuff. Went through all that phase. Anyway, then one day I was standing she said, I still have she said, the FBI came out here and everything. I said, really? She goes, yeah. She goes, I still have the card that the FBI man, the agent that was investigating the case, she said, I still have the card if you would like to have it. And I said, well, yes, I would like to have it. I want to find out if they ever found her body, if they ever found out what happened to her, And then I was like thinking, this is a woman? Because I don't know why I thought all spirits were male. I mean, isn't everything evil? Oh, sorry, I'm trying to be funny. Anyway, I didn't understand it. And so I took the card and I started thinking about that. Could this be a female spirit that was killed and is around here somewhat? What does it have to do with my shop? Is she buried under here or something? Is she buried under where that trash can is sitting in the hallway? Why is this stuff going on? Because I knew there was something there, and everybody else did too. And so I just kept praying about it every day. And one day I was in the back of the salon, and one of my really funny hairdressers was talking to me, and we were just standing back there. We neither one had a customer, so we were standing back there talking. We were waiting for our customers to come in. And I had my arms crossed, I remember, like this, and I was just standing there talking to her, and she was, on this side talking to me. And all of a sudden I heard the trash can scoot in the hallway, and I turned my head and looked, and there was this woman standing there. And she was beautiful. She was tall. She was taller than me. I'm 5'7", so she had to be at least 5'9", 5'10", something like that. And she had long brown hair all the way down to the middle, past the middle of her back. And she had it pulled back like this, and she had one of those big old barrettes they used to wear in the 70s, and she had it clipped back there in the back, and she's just got her head turned looking at me, like this. And the look on her face, I couldn't tell what the look was, but I was going to say, "We'll be right with you, ma'am," but for some reason I couldn't talk. And I was trying to figure out what the look on her face was. And I was looking at her hair thinking, well, she's got this regrowth about that long that needs to be colored. Her natural hair was a lot darker than the rest of her hair, sort of like mine is now, the darker part and then the lighter part. Well, her darker part was about that long, and it was like real dark brown, and the rest of her hair was more of a red, like, that looks blonde, while hers was like a reddish brown. And so I'm thinking, well, she's coming in here to get her roots touched up, because I'm a hairdresser, and that's what I would think. So anyway, I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me, and I can't speak, which is highly unusual if you know me at all. And then I was like, my mind was trying to wrap around what was happening, because I did not understand. And I looked away from her, and then I looked back because I realized that something was up, And I looked back, and she wasn't there. And so I stepped out the door because I was going to say, "We'll be right with you, ma'am." I didn't want her to think we were back there talking and that we weren't paying attention to the customers or whatever. So I stepped out to look to see if she went up to the front, and she was nowhere. There was a lady up by the front, but she had really short brown hair, and this other lady's hair was down past her back. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I turned back and looked at Jerry, and I said, she goes, what is it? Because she could tell something was wrong. I said, "Jerry, I just saw somebody standing by the trash can, and I think it was her." And she goes, "I saw something out the corner of my eye," and I turned my head real fast, but I didn't see anything. I said, "Yeah," I said, "she wants me to do something," because the look on her face was, "You're going to realize who I am in a minute, and I want you to do something." I was like, she wants me to do something, but I don't know what that would be. What can I do, I felt like this was the lady that had been killed, and that she was somehow trying to show me something so that we could find out what happened to her. I'm sorry if you don't believe in that. That's just what I believe. So anyway, I was like, what could I do? There's nothing that I could do. I could not think of anything that I could do to help this person. And, people started telling me, God don't need you to help that person that's dead. I'm sorry, I'm being sarcastic. If he wanted something done about this, he would do it himself. And I'm like, what does God use to do anything? He uses people. And some of us can see things that other people can't. And I really thought that anybody standing there could have seen her, because she was that real to me. If somebody else had been standing next to her, I would not be able to tell whether they were the real person or whether she was. She did not look like some ghastly being and ugly demonic or any of that. No, I know the devil comes as an angel of light. Y'all, I know all the scriptures. She was just a human spirit, and she was there because something had happened that we needed to find out about. That's what I truly believed at the time. That's what I believe to this day. Anyway, I said, what can I do? So I realized the only thing, I kept praying about it, Lord, what can I do? In those few moments, I was like, what can I do, Lord? And he reminded me of the card that I had to the FBI agent. I said, I am going to call the FBI and ask them if they ever found her, if it was her husband that killed her. The lady had told me, the lady who gave me the card told me that when she went missing, she had a 10-year-old son, and that she didn't know. I said, what happened to the son? If her husband killed her, did he get the son? What happened? She did not know. So I had those questions. So I wound up, and I thought, if I call the FBI, they are going to say, you are crazy, and they're going to throw they're not going to tell me anything, and they're going to throw everything in the trash, you know, file 13. But I felt compelled, so I called the FBI. And another unusual thing to me was that a woman answered the phone for the FBI. I thought it would be a man. I thought my ghost would be a man. I thought the FBI person would be a man. It was women. So this woman answered the phone, and she's, you know, introduced herself and asked me what she could do for me. And I said, well, you know, I moved out to this area not too long ago, and I opened a little beauty shop out here, and I heard about a story about a lady that had gone missing out here, and I may not get all of this correct because I'm doing it by memory, y'all. I can't find my manuscript. If I ever have my own book, you know, I can read it. So, you know, if you read it and there's a few words different, then sorry, but it's just my memory now about the story. Anyway, I can't remember exactly every conversation. You know, it's a 2-year story. But anyway, she just said that, she asked me what she could do, and I said I had moved out there, and I had opened this little beauty shop, and people had talked about this woman that had gone missing, and I wondered if they had ever found out what happened to her, you know, did her husband kill her, because some people think that her husband killed her, and did she know what her name was? For some reason, I just wanted to know her name. When I looked at her and she looked at me, from that moment on, I wanted to know what her name was. And she said, well, I don't know what case you're talking about. The detective that you're referring to on the card is no longer with our office. The agent that you're talking about on the card is no longer with our office. So I'll have to find out what agent is assigned to that case. But I need to know what is it that you know about this case, and how is it that you know these things? And I'm like, oh, great. So I said, well, I don't know a lot about it. I just know that a lady lived out here. I know where she lived, and I know that she went missing, and that she had a 10-year-old son when she went missing, and that they think that the police think that her husband killed her. And she said, well, how is it that you know these things? I said, well, because we've had people talking about it, and a lady that lived right next door to her came in and told me that she you know, knew about this story, and that she had this card. And I was trying not to tell her anything about the ghost sighting, you know. And she pressed me for more information, because that's what they do. So finally I just thought, oh well, you know, I'm just gonna tell her and see what happens. I was afraid she wouldn't tell me anything after that, and that he wouldn't call me back or anything else. But anyway, I said, okay. I said, fine. I said, to be honest with you, we've had all of these strange occurrences happening here in the salon. You know, the lights flickering, the lid flying off the trash can, the clock coming out of the teapot, and the channels changing, you know, on the TV, and all the things. And I said, and I think I just saw her standing in my hallway. And I was just waiting for her to hang up on me, you know. Well, she didn't hang up. She said, well, can you tell me what she looked like? And I was like, I could tell her what she looked like. And so I described her to her. You know, the things I forgot to tell y'all is that she was really skinny, and she had green eyes. I kept trying to decide if they were hazel or green. It almost felt like they could change from green to brown, you know, like hazel. My dad's eyes were hazel, so I get that. But they were more on the green side. And, you know, they were green at that moment, but I don't know. Anyway, she said, can I tell her what she looked like? So, I told her, and she had on a tan shirt and blue jeans. She looked just like any other person I've ever seen. And and I told her about her needing her regrowth done and all of that. And she said, okay, well, I don't know who you're talking about, but I will see. I gave her about the address and everything. She said she was going to call the agent and try to find out. He would be aware, because they all have little areas, and so they're aware of the things that have happened in their areas, and then he would call me back, but probably be about 2 weeks. And I said, okay. And I said, I really thought you were just going to throw everything that I told you into file 13, you know, because it's a case. I said, really? And she said, oh, we get reports like this all the time, especially if someone has been killed and is buried nearby a place. I couldn't believe it. Again, the things that I thought people thought were crazy are actually things that are reported by other people. And throughout history, you know, these types of sightings have been reported. But it had not happened in my world yet. So anyway, that's what happened there. And then time went on, and about 2 weeks, it wasn't even 2 weeks later, an agent called me and he said, I understand you have questions about one of our cases. Oh, by that time I didn't ask her all my questions, you know, I was more giving her the information she asked me for. And by that time I had a million questions, you know, I was like, you know, what was her name? That was my number one thing. What happened to her little boy? Does her husband still live out here? You know, all of these things. And he said, ma'am, I can't answer those questions for you. I need to know what it is you know about this case and how it is that you know it. And I said, well, I already told the other lady. And he said, well, I need you to tell me. And I said, okay. Well, I told him the same things that I had told her. And I said, and at the end of all that, I said, I just want to know what her name is. And he told me her name. And for this purposes of this story, and in my book, her name is Jamie, Jamie. And that's not her real name. She's still considered a missing person, an open case on the FBI most wanted missing person list, whatever it's called. So I really am not allowed to divulge her name or anything. But anyway, so he told me her name, and I just felt so good to know her name. And he said, you know, that he would be calling me back, and why hadn't I already called and reported this activity? Because it had been going on for like 8 months or so. And I said, well, I thought y'all would think I was crazy. And he said, well, if you hear any further details or anything, well then, you know, keep my number, let me know, and all this stuff. Well, not very long after that, we noticed that someone is over on the property that used to be her property, and they are digging over there. Well, first, before we really noticed that, well, I think we noticed that, but anyway, this other lady came into the salon, and it happened to be the daughter of that first lady that gave me the card for the FBI. And this daughter was staying at her parents' house for some reason. I don't really remember why. And she said, you know, I was talking to my mom and them, and they found this barrel on their property, and it's located back in the brush. And it's located back so far that they've never gone back there and get it, but they wondered if it might have something to do with this case. And I said, oh my gosh, because they lived right next door to where the woman that went missing lived, you know. I said, oh my gosh. I said, well, we probably need to call the FBI and have them come out here and get it. You know, she's like, they don't know where it came from or what's in it or anything, and they can't get back there to get to it. And I said, okay, well, she goes, but you can come on the property, you can bring whoever you want to anytime to get it if you want to get it. And I said, okay, well, you know, I felt like that was really important. And so I called the agent, and I said, I told him what happened, and he said, I had already called them. Let me back up. I had already called them and told them I thought somebody was over there digging on that property where the missing woman had lived. And, you know, I'm sitting here thinking it's probably her husband, and he's probably digging her up and moving her or something. Somebody's told him that we're investigating. You know, I didn't know. So, and I have a mind that just goes in that direction, you know. Anyway, I said, I had told them that somebody was over there digging on the property. Well, when I called back about the barrel, he said, oh, if your friend has a barrel on her property and she has given you permission to go get it and you want to, well, that's fine. And if you find anything, well, then give us a call. And I said, what? And he said, aren't you the one that called about the digging on the property? And I said, yes. And he said, well, because of your call, we went over there and everything is as it was. And I said, what do you mean everything is as it was? I had seen the digging. I knew, or I had seen trucks going in and out of there. I knew they were digging and burning trees and everything. And I said, what do you mean it is as it was? He said, we went over to the property and it is as it was. There is no digging going on over on the property. And I was so confused, I didn't know what to say. And he said, are we talking about the same property? And I said, I don't know. I said, I'm talking about the property that she lived on when she was still alive. And he said, the one with the RV and the barn behind it. I said, I have no idea what's on the property. I've never been over there. And he said, well, if you want to go get that barrel and you find anything, you just let us know. And I was so mad. It's like, here I am calling them, telling them what's going on, and don't even act like they're interested. So I said, okay. And I thought to myself, that is the last time that I am calling them. You know, if I find out anything else, I'm just going to call her family, because I had taken her name and I had looked it up on the computer and I read about her family, and it was very interesting because it said that she had a sister who was a police officer. She had a brother-in-law who was a police officer, and she had a brother. I believe the article said she had a brother that was an agent, an FBI agent in the city nearby us. And I was sitting here thinking, and it talked about her dad and how the family just wanted to know, you know, what had happened to her, which is what all families want to know when someone in their family goes missing. And it said some stuff. It sort of almost, that article almost blamed her in the disappearance. They said that she had left work on the day she went missing and had gone out with some of the friends at work and had gone to a bar and danced with some guy. And so they think maybe this guy from the bar had something to do with her disappearance, but he had been investigated and cleared and all of these things. And her car was found in a subdivision that was just right up the street from where my hair salon was. It was up a cross street that went a different way in a different subdivision, and it was just parked in there, and they found her car, and they didn't find any evidence of anything that may have happened to her. So, you know, they had cleared the man that she had gone dancing, but they almost made it sound like, this article almost made it sound like, you know, it was her fault, and, you know, that she had done something that caused her on, or maybe she just ran away. They said, you know, she's a grown woman. If she wants to leave and go to another town or state and change her identity and never come home, that's her business. I was like, well, it would be, except that she had a child that she's responsible for. And isn't that like abandonment of a child or something? Well, nobody wanted to discuss that part. They knew she wasn't, that she didn't run. I said, she didn't run away from home and change her life. I said, something's happened to her, you know. Well, they had investigated this for so many years. She went missing in, I think it was 1993 that she went missing. It was either 92 or 93 that she went missing. And so, you know, this was 2003 or something that I had that salon. Anyway, she had already been missing all of that time, and they had not, even with the FBI and everybody else looking into it, had not found out what had happened to her. They had come up on the house, on the property, when she gone missing, and they had, her husband was out there burning something in a big burn pile. So they worried that that might be her, and they investigated that and everything. They never found anything. So that was the story that I knew at that point. And so I was now mad because he had insinuated that I had lied to him by telling him that someone was over on that property burning stuff. And he wasn't interested in coming to get the barrel. And I thought that might be a big clue. Even if she wasn't in the barrel, maybe it would be a clue of some kind But then what if she was in that barrel, And again, I kept telling everybody, the reason the lady told me about this barrel is because I kept saying, she keeps throwing that trash can lid. Maybe they put her in a can or a barrel and they buried her around here somewhere. That's what I kept saying. Well, when the lady had talked to her parents and found out about this barrel, and it was only not even a quarter of a block from the shop, so she thought it might have something to do with it. So he said he wasn't going to do anything about it, so I decided that I was going to do something about it. So I talked to my friend, and I asked her to go with me to get the barrel. And one day we went over there, and I had a truck. I had a Chevrolet 1500 step side truck with a camper on the back of it, because I had horses and dogs and all that, so I always had hay or something in the back of my truck. Anyway, I thought, well, we can put that barrel in my truck and take it to the police or whatever we're going to do with it. Well, we got over to the house. The lady had told us we could come anytime, so she was at work. My friend met me at the shop, and we drove over there in my truck to get the barrel. And I pulled up into her driveway, which was behind the house set up here, and then the driveway was behind her house. And when I pulled into the driveway, we were looking across, and you could see the other lady's property that had gone missing. You could see that they had been in there clearing the brush, burning the trees, everything, and then you could see the RV that the agent said was on the property and the barn that stood behind it. It was just completely cleared out, and you could see everything. It had been so covered in brush that you couldn't even see it from the street or anything, and now these people had cleared it all out. So much for that. They had been burning over there and digging and everything. So I was like, I wonder who's doing that. What are they doing that for? I wonder if it's her husband. I wonder if they moved her. I kept thinking that she must be buried over there nearby, right? So that's why she's showing up in my shop. So anyway, we get there and get out of the truck and go to the back of the property where the barrel is supposed to be. We start looking into the, brush, into the back as far as we can, and we see that barrel. But it is so far back there, it looks like you'd have to have a brush hogger, to get back there to it. It was so thick and dense, that thicket there through the trees. And I had been in a bad car wreck that had hurt my back, and I was just sitting still with the red light, so it wasn't my fault. But anyway, I had back surgery, everything else, and I was sitting there going, I had put on my boots because, snakes and everything, and I had a machete, and I was going to go over there thinking I would just clear off some brush, and get back there and get that barrel. Well, when I got there and saw all of that brush, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this. And my friend was in no way a country girl. She was a city girl. She was a Buddhist, and she was just, had her beads and everything on, hoping for good vibes for us to be able to, get this barrel. So I love her to death. Anyway, so I pick up my machete and I go to whack. I was going to just whack through there, and I didn't know how long it was going to take me, or how many days or anything else, but I was going to do it until I was determined to get that barrel. Well, I hit the first vine, and my machete was so dull that it just bounced off the vine, and then I was like, oh my gosh. I was so frustrated, and it just felt like everything was trying to keep me from being able to get to this barrel. So I said, Lord, you know what? I said, you know that my back is hurt, and if I whack that vine one more time, it's going to hurt my back worse, and then I'm not going to be able to work. I wanted to keep my little shop, even though I had been injured in that car wreck and everything. I loved my little hair salon, and I wanted to keep it, and me having it helped everyone else have a job as well. So there was like 6 of us that had jobs because of that shop. So I didn't want to lose it, and I just loved everybody. Anyway, so I prayed about it, and I stood there, and I was just standing there, and it was just like my eyes got open. Things I had been looking at changed, and I looked down, and I could see that the vines, where they were growing on the ground, the roots didn't look very deep to me. And I thought, I wonder if I could get down there and pull those roots up and just pull those vines out, and then, crawl in there and pull some more roots and I was 30 years younger than I am now. Anyway, pull some, more out until I can get all the way back to that barrel. So I tried it. I reached down and I pulled the roots up of this vine, but when I did, I realized that that whole vine was connected to all that brush that was hanging there. That vine was connected, all up in it and everything. And so I started lifting it, and as I lifted it, it was like all the brush just came up with the vine. And I lifted it all the way until it was over my head, and I'm standing there holding it up like this. And there was a straight path cleared out with no brush all the way from where I was standing to the barrel. And I said to my friend, I said, can you hold this up for a minute and let me go in there and get that barrel? And so she did. So I went in there, and that barrel was full of water or whatever, a person, I didn't know. But it was so heavy, and I felt like I was moving somebody's coffin. And I started trying to kind of roll it out, because I couldn't lift it, I couldn't carry it, I didn't have anything to drag it with. So I just started trying to roll it out, and I rolled it, and it was really heavy, and I finally got it all the way out to where she was with the vines and got it out from under there. It was quite a ways back in there, though. It took me a while to get it out. And I got it out, and then as I got it out, a car drove up, and it was her son. And he was a young man, a very sweet young man, also a Buddhist person. And he had come to help us. So he was a little, I wish he'd been there an hour earlier. But anyway, but he was helpful. He helped me. As he was getting out of the car, I was still rolling the barrel, and I dropped it. And I felt like I had dropped somebody's coffin, because it landed on its side, and it just went rolling down the yard. The yard was kind of sloped. It went rolling down the yard. It landed in the ditch, and the cork to it popped off, the little white plastic thing. It was one of those plastic barrels, that they put chemicals in and stuff, I guess. A big old blue barrel. And anyway, the cork popped off of it, and when it did, all of this water just started gushing out of it. I thought it was going to be bloody or something, I'm so dramatic, I guess. I don't know, but it was scary, So, and I kept feeling like we were going to get in trouble, that somebody was after us, Anyway, and we had permission to be there, but it just felt like somebody was after us. Anyway, it went down the hill. The water was leaking out of it, and it stank so bad. Oh my gosh. So we let most of the water run out of it, and then my friend's son said, well, let's leave a little water in it so that they would have enough to test in case there's any kind of DNA in it or anything like that. And I was like, okay. Sorry, y'all, this is a sad story. So if you don't like sad stories, because it's about someone dying, and it's about the investigation that goes on with this. But anyway, we let it mostly drain out, and then we took the barrel, and I'm so glad he was there, because he helped me lift it. Even though it was empty, with the water that it had in it, it was still heavy. We lifted it up and put it in my truck. Well, it stank so bad. Well, anyway, after we got it in my truck, they said, or my friend, the lady, said, well, let's go over there. I said, well, what the agent did tell me, he didn't tell me. I called after I talked to the agent, and he told me that, if I wanted to go if my friend told me that she had a barrel in her yard, and I wanted to go get that barrel, then I could, and to call them if I found anything. I was so mad, I thought, I'm only calling her family if I do find anything. And then I thought, well, I wonder if I'm going to get in trouble because I had this, I think a lot of us want to investigate stuff and find out what happened. Well, I have that in me, and I was like, I want to find out, I'm going to find out now what happened to this lady. And my friends were as determined as me. I had everybody, I was like, y'all, we're going to find out what happened to this lady. So, so my friend was like, so I called the sheriff's department, and I said, this is the deal. There's a lady that went missing out here, and we're trying to find out what happened to her, and I want to know if I'm allowed to investigate it myself. And he said, well, you can investigate anything you want to. You can ask people questions if you want to. and all that. The only thing you can't do is break the law while you're investigating. So no trespassing, no stalking anyone, and you know, things like that. Do not break the law while you are investigating. I said, okay, thank you. And so he had told me that, so my friend said, let's go over there to the property where the RV was and the barn. And I'm kind of a Miss Goody Two-Shoes. I don't break the law. I don't do things I'm not supposed to. My mother said that if I ever did anything wrong, that I would tell on myself, and then I would punish myself way worse than she ever would have. And I was called a Goody Two-Shoes all during school and all the things. I'm just sensitive about everything. I have a guilty conscience. You know, I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. You know, I have trouble in relationships, stuff like that, probably because I'm so much like I am. But anyway, so I said, we can't go over there because the sheriff said that we can't trespass or anything while we're investigating. And she goes, I don't see any no trespassing signs. So we're looking around, and I said, I don't either. And but I still thought it was wrong, but I was so determined that, so I sinned, and I'm sorry. But I was like, I'm going. I mean, we're going, because we're going to find out what happens. Like, so the three of us went over there, and the minute, and there was an RV, a little old, it was old RV, probably an 80s RV, I don't know. And then but they had cleared out all around it. And then behind it, there was a big, huge barn. Well, when I opened the door to that RV, it was like a presence hit me, and it was not good. It felt like demons. It was so negative. I was just overwhelmed with it, and I started praying against it, you know. And but when I opened the door, when I looked, the first thing I saw on the table was over here on the right-hand side, and it still had her makeup sitting on it, like she had just sat down and put on her makeup. It looked clean in the camper. It didn't look out of place. It looked like you could go right in there and make some breakfast, you know, in the kitchen. How could it be that way after 11 years of sitting there in the woods? You know, it didn't look like anybody lived in it, but it was completely clean. Usually things would have cobwebs and all the stuff. You know, no, this wasn't like that at all. I mean, there might have been a little dust, but it wasn't even noticeable. It was the strangest thing. It was like going back in time or something. Well, anyway, we went in there, and I felt so compelled to do this that I guess that I overlooked the other feelings I had of I shouldn't be in here, I shouldn't be touching this person's stuff, you know, whatever. Anyway, I'm looking at the table, and her makeup's on it, and I see a card laying there. And I picked it up. It was a card for a child, you could tell. I picked it up, and I read it, and it was the birthday card that she had left. It was for her son. And I was told that he was 10 years old when she went missing. So this was a birthday card that this woman that's missing and has been missing for 11 years had left to her 10-year-old son, and it's still laying there on that table by her makeup. And I'm like, this is his card, and he should have it. Why is it still sitting here? It was like everybody just left the place. The husband apparently didn't stay there because nothing was moved that she had touched on those last days. And I was like, you know, this needs to be given back to her, to her family. So I took it. And then, I know, I'm a criminal. I'm not. I got permission later. Anyway, and then, but I was giving it to her family. I didn't take the makeup or anything, but I took that card. And so then we decided we were going to look around the RV for any kind of evidence that there might be. So we start looking around the RV, and I went in, I found this box of writing, and so I started looking through the writing. I'm a writer. That's probably why it interested me. I don't know. But also I thought I might find out more about, find out something if they were fighting, or if, how people write journals. Maybe she wrote something about what was going on or whatever. So I start reading these writings, and I come to this one paper. It turned out she was attending college, like junior college, and she had written up, she had several assignments where she was writing. It's 11 o'clock. I don't know how long y'all want me to go with this story. It's a book, so it's going to take me, about 3 weeks to, or so, to tell you the whole story. But I'm going to go for about another 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll cut off for this week, and I'll pick back up next week. But anyway, I found this writing, and I came across this page. So I learned from there that she was attending college at the local junior college, and she had these assignments where she had to write essays on about things. And I saw one piece of paper that was a little short story about an assignment she was given to do something to other people to find out what their reaction would be, and then to write about what she did and what their reaction was. So she was trying to think of something to do for this assignment, and what she decided to do was to go into a local bank and pretend and stand in line with people and pretend that she got ill and fainted, and then see the reaction of the people there. Well, that's what she did, and everybody was really nice and helpful and all that. So she wrote down the reactions of the people, and I thought that was really interesting, to find that out about her. And then I read through some more of her writings, and then all of a sudden I came across this piece of paper, and it looked like a copy of a page out of the Bible. And I didn't really think much about it, except, I don't know. My mind just thought, well, that's just a copy of one of the pages out of the Bible. And I started to put it down, but for some reason I wasn't able to put it down. And so I turned it over and I looked at it, and I started reading it. Well, I was kind of curious about which scripture was it that they were reading out of the Bible, right? So I was going to read it, and I was like, good, they read their Bible, and feeling good about that and everything. And then I started reading it, and it said, how to kill the angels of God. And I went, well, I know my Bible, and that's not in the Bible. And I was like, oh my gosh, because people had started telling me that, what did they tell me? People were telling me, this is all of the devil, and you are opening doors, and God doesn't need you to do anything. And they loved me. They didn't want me to get into a situation where I was being attacked by demons, which is exactly what happened to me. But they were taking it from the other perspective of, it's my fault that this is happening. If I wouldn't open doors and let the demons into my life, well, then this stuff wouldn't happen to me. Well, I have to agree with that and say that when you are fighting for the good, the demons are going to try to attack you, and you have to be ready to fight back. And I'm equipped to do that because of my spirit and who I am and what I've studied and all the things. We have a person here that her family is in horrible grief and has been for 11 years. Her son, God only knows what kind of condition he's in when he's been there, and his mother has been taken from him in some way and never returned. There are people being affected by this evil that has happened, and somehow God is trying to reveal it so that justice can be done. That's my opinion. Anyway, at the time, I was just freaked out. I tell you the truth, I was still in my mindset of my upbringing, and that it was all evil, and I was at fault and all things. So they really made me feel bad during this, but I was so compelled that I could not back down. So anyway, I'm reading this, and it's about how to kill the angels of God. And so all of that stuff that everybody had been telling me about is all my fault, and I've opened doors. And look here, this woman, apparently she was evil. This woman that went out dancing with the man and everything else, she must have been evil. Because they were yeah, I read in the margins, there was all of this stuff printed in the margins. Someone had written in between the columns. I do that in my Bible, so I understood that part. But it was all about how to kill God's people and the angels of God and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, they were in a satanic cult. And I started trying to throw that piece of paper down back into the box, and I was ready to leave. I was mad. I said, everybody at church told me not to get involved in this. I should have known, but you know, my heart was telling me to get involved. And I just kept praying about it. I kept feeling like the Lord called me into this. And I was like, you know, everybody at church was right. And I started trying to throw that paper down, and I cannot let go of that paper. It was like stuck in my hand. I know that sounds fantastical, but it's the truth. And I tried like 4 times to throw that paper. I was so mad. And I was throwing it down in that box, and it would not release from my hand. And so I took it back up, and a voice came to me and said, stop. Wait, it's not her writing. And I went, you know, I had been reading her writing, right? See, there's a reason for everything. I had been reading her writing, because back in that day, you hand wrote everything, you know? And I had been reading her writing. And so I stopped, and I looked at the paper, and sure enough, it wasn't her writing. And the voice said to me, it was him. Find his writing. And so then I was like, okay. And so I was able to just lay the paper down with no problem. And I start looking for his writing. Well, while I'm looking for his writing, my little friend, the young man, found a letter in a book. In the front room, there was books, and he was they were mechanic books and stuff. Apparently the husband worked on automotives and everything. And anyway, he was thumbing through the books to see, I didn't even think to do that, to see if there's anything in the books, and he found a letter written from the woman to her husband, and they were in a fight. And anyway, it described the fight that was going on between them. And I said, that's evidence. That shows that she was doing something that he was mad about. And so maybe he killed her for that, you know. So save that, and we'll give that to her family, you know. Because I was going to give everything to her family. And they can give it to the police. Well, you know, I knew that they were police, so they would know what to do with it when we gave it to them. So anyway, I'm looking for his writing, and I come across a checkbook. And in the checkbook, it was his checkbook, and it was those copier checks, you know, when you write on it, it makes a copy. And it was his writing on that paper. So the voice came back to me and said it wasn't her, it was him, you know. I think that he had already told me that it wasn't her, it was him. Find his writing, so I did. So then I said, okay, Lord, because I knew that was the Lord speaking to me. Now, whether it was through a little Lord, a saint of God, or whether it was God himself speaking to me, I cannot say. But I can say that the voice felt like God to me, but it could have been, you know, one of the smaller lords in heaven. Or it could have been Jesus, the large Lord in heaven. Anyway, so I said, okay, Lord, I understand, I know. I said, but I need prayer warriors. I felt like I needed people because of the oppression and the feeling in the RV, and I felt, you know, like there was demonic spirits there. I said, I need prayer warriors here to pray while I'm going through this stuff, because I felt like something was going to get us. I just kept feeling watched. I kept feeling like something was going to get us. All the things. It wasn't fear. It was caution. It was, I need to be ready to fight type of deal. And I said, I need somebody here to pray while I go through this stuff, because my 2 friends weren't going to do that. They were Buddhists. And so I said, so we need to leave now, and I'll come back later with prayer warriors. And so I told my friends, I said, we had the letter, you know, that proved that, to me, that was motive. And I had examples of their writings, and I had the paper that showed that he was mixed up in some kind of a satanic cult or something. And so we had that evidence, and I had the baby's card, you know. And so we took a few little things with us, and I told them, y'all, we're going to go now. And the young man actually had literally gotten sick. After he had found that letter, he literally got sick. and he had to go out of the RV anyway. And so I told my friend, I said, we're going to go now and I'll come back later. And so we took the barrel and we took the things that we had from the RV, and we went over to my house and we went in the dining room. We brought all the paperwork into the dining. It was just paperwork, that's all. We didn't take their valuables or anything. There wasn't anything valuable in there, I don't think, but we took their paperwork that we found, stuff that we felt was evidence, and we took the card, and we had the barrel. Oh my gosh. Well, they drove in their cars over to my house and I drove in my truck. It stank so bad. It smelled like dead animals, and I was about to get sick the whole way home. I had to roll my windows down. I mean, even though the barrel was in the back of my truck in the camper, the smell permeated through the windows and everything. With my windows rolled up, I had to roll them down trying to get the air to move through the truck so that I could. It was gross. Anyway, so I get to my house and we go to the table and we're sitting there looking over all of the things that we got. And we're discussing what happened and all of that stuff. And my friend was like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to call the FBI back? And I said, no. I said, if I do anything at all, I'm going to call her family. I said, I guess I need to call her family now, because we have that barrel, we have these things. I don't know what they want me to do with them, I said, so I guess I'll try to find out where they are, or, how I can reach her family. So I knew from the newspaper article that I had read, on the computer, that the family were police officers in a town, a certain town. I can't use specifics, y'all. And so I called that town's police force and I said, I'm looking for, I know I use the name Williams in my book, so then I'll use that name. I need my book so that I can remember the names that I used in the book. But anyway, I said, I'm looking for the Mrs. of the Williams. I can't remember what I called her. And the sister, the sister of this woman that went missing was a police officer. And they said, we don't have, I think I said Jennifer Williams. And that's not the real name, that's the name I use in the book. Anyway, I said, I'm looking for a Jennifer Williams. And they said, we don't have a Jennifer Williams on our roster. I said, oh. I said, well, do you have any Williams on your roster? And they said they did. And it was a Sergeant something Williams. And, but he was out of town. Did I want his voicemail? I could leave him a message. He would be out of town until Monday. This was on a Wednesday that we were doing all these things over there at their house, at that house. And so he was going to be out of town until that Monday. And I said, yes, that's fine, if you could just let me leave a voicemail. So I left a voicemail and I just told him my name and I said, I'm trying to reach, I said, whatever his first name that I used in the beginning, Mr. Williams, I told him my name. I'm trying to reach Jennifer Williams. I think that's your wife. If it is, could you please just have her give me a call? And I left the phone number to my work because that's where I would be on Monday. And so I hung up and I'm sitting there talking to my friends, and a few minutes later the phone rings and I answer it, and this person says, this is Jennifer Williams. And I said, oh my God, my heart just dropped in my stomach, oh my gosh, it was like I wanted to cry, because here I am talking to the sister of this woman that died out there, and we know that she's been murdered. We can't prove it, but we know that she's been murdered. We're trying to find out what happened to her, and I am sitting here talking to her sister, It just crushed me. I just wanted to bawl my head off, but I was trying to be strong, and I said, yes, I said, my name is Cathy, and I said, I just wonder, I don't know what I said right at this minute. Mainly, I just told her that I own the beauty salon. Oh yes, I just went through the whole story. I said, I have something to tell you, and I don't know how to tell you you know, because it's sensitive and everything. And she said, that's okay. You just go ahead and tell me. And she was very professional, you know, and I said, okay. And I said, it's an unbelievable, you know, story and all things. And she's like, that's okay. You just tell me. So I said, well, you know, I'm Cathy, and I opened this beauty salon out here, and ever since I've had the beauty salon, these strange things have been happening, you know, with the lights flickering and the TV's going on and off and all things. Went through the whole story all the way to where I was standing there and I saw her sister standing in the hallway and all that. And I was waiting for her to get so mad at me or something. I told her about going over to the property and getting her things, and how I now had the barrel in the back of my truck and we had some of her things. And she said, I said, so I don't know what you want me to do with her things. I said, I don't know what you want me to do at this point. And she just stayed in silence for a second, and then she said, just observe. Well, that's what I had been doing for like 9 months or longer at that point. Maybe it was longer than that at that point. But anyway, I had just been trying to find out, you know, talking to everybody and observing. That's what I had been doing. So I understood that. And I said, okay, that's fine. I said, but I have her things. What do you want me to do with her things? And she goes, well, she said, oh, wait, let me back up a minute. Somehow, I don't remember at what point, she said, I said, I found that letter in the box, and it had the thing about, you know, it was a part of a satanic Bible is what it was, as far as I believe. That's what they were saying that it was. And I said, so I thought that she had gotten into a satanic cult, and I was so mad, and I wasn't going to help anymore. And then I said, and then this voice told me that it wasn't her. I mean, she heard the whole story of that, you know, and she said, no, it wasn't, but that is what happened. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, that's what happened. She said he had gotten involved in what he called a church, and she said he went, and then he wanted her to go, and she went. The first time she went, it was pretty normal, but the second time she went, they revealed themselves for who they were, and that was that they were a satanic cult. Now, I'm supposed to say at this point that all satanic cults are not bad, that all of them don't sacrifice animals and people and all the things, but some of them do. It has been theoried and evidenced that some of them do, and this particular one did, because at the time, I'll tell that part later. Anyway, she said that's what had happened. Her husband had gotten involved in this cult and wanted her to be a part of it. And she, being a Christian person, said no, she was not going to be a part of that. And she wanted him to stop going to it. And she called her sister, not that sister, but a different one, and told her what was going on. And 2 weeks later, she went missing. So that's where I'm going to stop it for today. And I'll pick back up next week there. So I'm sorry, but it is, you know, a long story, and I don't know how long it's going to take me to tell the story, but my whole goal has always been to show everybody, you know, what can be found out if we listen to guidance from above. And we don't have to be afraid, even though bad things can happen to us when we go to do these investigations and stuff. And bad things did happen to me, and I'll tell y'all about that later. But I wouldn't change it for anything because of what all happened in the end. So anyway, I appreciate y'all listening. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope that y'all leave me some comments on how you feel about the stories, and I will pick back up here next week. And I would appreciate it too also if some of y'all would follow me, because I'm trying to build my following. So thank you. I don't see any comments right now, and I know a lot of people watch this on replay, and so I'll pick it back up next week. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye.